Coming up on Over a Barrel.
Some of the metrics are turning red here. We are up now a penny from a year ago. Price is also up about 7 cents in the last month.
Over a Barrel starts right now. Welcome to Over a Barrel. I'm Matt McClain, and the other guy right there, he's Patrick DeHaan. Hey, thanks for joining us right here on Over a Barrel. And make sure, by the way, if you've got all kinds of stuff going on there, make sure that if you're listening on Spotify, you are on YouTube, you are on Facebook. I mean, like, we're everywhere. I mean, it's crazy at how all that works, right? Just make sure you like or subscribe to the channel, and that way you get an alert every time we throw out a new podcast. And Patrick, hello. How are you?
Speaking about alerts for podcasts, it's probably been a couple of weeks. We're in the middle of the summer, and it was nice to take some downtime. I'm fantastic, Matt. Hopefully, you're hanging in there as well.
Yeah, we did take a week off. It was a little hiatus, and I have to admit, I felt a little weird about it. I'm like, what? I don't have my podcast to go on.
When are we going to record?
Yeah, it was a very odd feeling, and I wasn't sure what to do with myself. And during that time, so I just want you to
dedication. That's something our followers can definitely appreciate. That
right?
We miss them. So hey, it's good to be back in the seat here, and we can now catch up. There's been a couple things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. There was the earliest Category 5 storm on record. So that segues nicely into what we should talk about today, and maybe we should start there, Matt, because there's a lot of folks down in Houston and Texas that are still without power. There have been a lot of talk in the media about CenterPoint, who's I believe the transmission operator down there, the utility for much of Houston. And there have been a lot of folks that have been emailing us about our tracker. Now, to make the distinction, Gas Buddy's emergency tracker, something that we activate on our side. But because of Beryl being a relatively low Category 1 storm that we did not anticipate would cause many problems, there's some geographic challenges if we do activate that, Matt. To just quick highlight that, we would have to activate the outage tracker for the entire state of Texas, and that's kind of a limitation that we have. We have to kind of weigh the totality of the situation with turning the tracker on for all of Texas. And with this being a relatively low Category 1 storm, I would point out that some stations are having electric, power outages. But there's not a fuel shortage here. Refineries are relatively unscathed from this. There were a couple refineries down in Corpus Christi that got inundated that did shut down proactively. But this is primarily not a fuel supply issue. It's a issue of getting power restored. And the good news is CenterPoint at least is reporting that they have turned back on the power for about 1 million folks in Houston, and another 400,000 by later today, and another 350,000 by Sunday. So that's the distinction here, is we did not activate our hurricane tracker. So those that have been using the app, we have not activated the feature of finding stations with gas and power. It's something that we look at a case-by-case basis. So that's where we'll start. I've been getting some questions about the hurricane. It's not having any real impact on what you're paying at the pump. Having said that, prices have drifted higher, but the storm is not the responsible culprit. We'll get into oil prices, but that's the primary culprit here.
Listen, I know that Beryl, as its name, Over a Barrel, right? Hurricane Beryl, a different spelling, though, if we want to point that out. It created problems far, far inland, even here across the Midwest. Where I am at, where not quite where you were at. I was on what's called, because I lived in Tampa, did broadcasting, the dirty side of the storm, the right-hand side of the storm, if you will. Tornadoes spawned all throughout Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and on into even New England. There have been some issues this week as a result of that. So while it certainly was not a hurricane making its way through, it most definitely created some problems and a lot of damages all the way through. So, yeah, that's let's talk about some of the prices and why crude oil is going up, gas prices and whatnot. Talk to me about what's going on with everything. And I see you're pulling up a kind of
Yeah,
a map
I
of
was going to
Houston.
quick dive into some of the power outages. So, down in Houston, it looks like things are slowly recovering. And on the price front, Matt, we have seen a bit of a drift up in price here, about a 3 cent jump in the last week. So, by the way, this is the prices.gasbuddy.com portal where anyone can get the up to date information on what prices are as we stand here Friday morning. About 353, prices down about a penny here from yesterday, but some of the metrics are turning red here. We are up now a penny from a year ago. Prices also up about 7 cents in the last month. If we use the biggest movers here in the last week, we'll be able to very quickly see where prices are moving up and down. Boy, there's a lot of red there on this list showing, 13. There's only a couple states that have seen prices decrease modestly from last week. So, unfortunately, Matt, most of the country is seeing prices gently increase, some of them
Well,
more harshly. Indiana is a state that engages in what we've called price cycling. So the increases there tend to be significant before prices recede a bit. I think North Carolina is even a state that we're starting to see some of that price cycling. Ohio and Delaware. See, Ohio, by the way, if you're tuning in from Ohio, you'll want to fill your tank up because you are on the downside of that price cycling. Look at that, though. The departure between Ohio at 333 and Indiana at 361. Matt, I'm going to quick pull up a chart and compare the Ohio average here. And anyone can do this, by the way. So if I'm going to compare Ohio and Indiana, this is going to highlight that if you're in Ohio, look at that departure.
wow.
So typically, and you'll see here that Ohio and Indiana cycled on the same day last time. And you'll notice that Ohio's continued to get a bit of a reprieve here as Indiana has actually cycled and Indiana now is coming down. So if you're tuning in, if you're listening in Ohio, if you haven't already filled up, I would fill up because looking at this historical chart, we did see a big departure between looking about a couple weeks ago, Matt. The difference between Indiana and Ohio is fairly large then, but it's also much larger now. And what that tells me is that Ohio is about to see a big price cycle. Probably, where are they right now? 332. I'm going to guess that most stations will probably go up to 369 potentially today. If
Wow.
not today, Friday, then first thing in the week, Monday. But getting back to the biggest movers, there's a lot of increases out there, Matt. And what about you in your neck of the woods there down in Kentucky? Maybe a little bit of a
Yeah.
increase?
We've definitely had an increase. I've been all over the map. I've been in Illinois. I've been in Missouri. I've been in Tennessee. I've obviously been in Kentucky. And yes, I am noticing a very big uptrend. And I'm not saying dollars, but definitely dimes, right? And so we are definitely looking at a situation where prices have been on the up. The one time that I filled up a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I was paying like 287, 297, somewhere in
You
the neighborhood.
lucky
I
guy.
know, I know. For folks in California,
Way.
you are not shedding a tear for me, and I fully understand that, and I understand that very, very clearly. Right now, the cheapest I can find in my area is about 309 to 319. So,
Speaking of
and that's
California, Matt,
yeah.
by the way, to pull up there, ouch.
Oh,
473, and you look at Kentucky, 334. And by the way, some of those, a lot of those sub $3 prices, as you were mentioning, have started to vaporize. In fact, I think there's only one state now below $3, and that may
Mississippi,
be, yeah, Mississippi, Tennessee, any, no. So we only
Mississippi.
have one state below
Yeah,
$3. That's Mississippi.
that's depressing to me. I just want you to know that, but it is what
I
it
think
is.
it's depressing to most of us. We'd all love to see gas prices quite a bit lower.
And
Um,
that's the key because that helps drive economics in so many ways, not just for for our own individual homes, but also for
right.
commodities and things that are placed on the store shelves and jet flights and passenger flights, all of these things that drives the economy in so many ways. And increases or decreases the prices on so many things, everything on the store shelf.
Well, and to your point, good news yesterday that came out. If I quickly highlight this here, was that the CPI data, Matt, that came out showed inflation eased a little bit in June. Surprising. It dipped what? There you go. Prices fell 0.01%. So it's not the amount that prices that inflation cooled, but it's the amount that prices fell.
Yes.
Right. And that was unexpected. I think they were expecting things to remain unchanged. So the good news is, as the chief economist at RSM says, it's better than good. So a little bit of optimism here. As we talk about those inflation numbers, the stock market roared after it saw this report the other day. And that's the good news. Inflation is slowing down.
Yes, I did see the Federal Reserve Chairman. I saw some comments made by him indicating particularly about interest rates, which also has a distinct impact on just about everything, acknowledging that they can't keep the rates as high as they are forever. And I'm paraphrasing. That's not an exact quote, but indicating that, ultimately we don't want to keep those high interest rates in place for the foreseeable future. In fact, they're talking about, how do we go about unwinding some of these rate increases, and hopefully with the fingers crossed sooner rather than later. And again, paraphrasing here, but indicating that, there's only so much that is going to do to the economy. And then after that, it actually has a negative as far as the economic growth. And they don't want to do that either. So like you and I were talking a few weeks back, it's that soft landing versus a serious situation that they are really trying to thread that needle quite carefully. And so that's something to keep a very watchful eye on. No question about that.
Yeah. And a lot of skepticism about that soft landing. You remember, oh, we're never going to be able to pull that off, or we're going to get thrust into a recession. And so far, the Fed has really thread that needle very delicately. And it's looking like they may be able to pull it off. Unemployment has inched up a little bit. That's more indicative, I think, of the increase in the participation in the labor market. The other thing, Matt, that we could address that happened since the last time we spoke was something that's very spoken of, especially in political circles on both sides of the spectrum. And that is the headline here that the DOE did award the sale and the shutdown of the Northeast Gasoline Supply Reserve. That happened just a couple of weeks ago, just ahead of July 4. Essentially, the million barrel reserve were sold at an average of $2.34 a gallon. If we do a simple arithmetic math, that's 42 million gallons at the price. I had anticipated $2.35 a gallon. They got $2.34. Arithmetic, $98.28 million. Matt, you remember, I think we spoke about the cost of maintenance over the last 10 years. The cost of maintenance of the supply reserve, $200 million over that last decade. And the amount of gasoline, the value of the gasoline in that reserve, less than half that taxpayers have spent on that. And by the way, that's why both President Trump had tried to shut that down in most of his budget bills, 2017, 2018. That was included in the Trump budget. This year, it was in the congressional budget that was approved by President Biden. Biden's taking a bit of a victory lap here, but let's be honest, this is something that Congress required. Either way, the Northeast Gasoline Supply Reserve is no more. The breakdown, BP, trading house, a couple trading houses in here, these three received oil or gasoline. Irving Oil, by the way, is a Canadian company. They're a Canadian refinery. So that was a little interesting. That those barrels will probably flow into the Maritimes. For those Americans who don't know what the Maritimes are, that's basically the Atlantic coast in Canada, Newfoundland, areas like St. John's is where Irving Oil has a refinery. So, the oil was released. The winning bids were submitted. 5 companies responded, submitting 19 different proposals, and contracts were all awarded. So moving forward, Matt, this Northeast Gasoline Supply Reserve is no more. Knock on wood that we don't see a superstorm in the Northeast or a hurricane. But the good news, I think, from that is that energy markets have really settled down.
Yeah, that's a good news. Very on a side note, I'll chase after this rabbit for just a moment because I do have a question. And it's a relevant question. For folks who live along the border between U.S. and Canada, U.S. and Mexico, they already know the answer to this very, very clearly. But a lot of Americans may not understand that. You drive into Canada, you drive into Mexico, you need to fill up at a pump.
Yeah.
Is your vehicle okay to do that? Are the
Oh, sure.
gasoline?
Yep.
You see my question. Is the gasoline the same on the other side of the border as it is in America, and or will it hurt the vehicle?
No, it won't. They are essentially the same standards. We're so intertwined with Canada, Matt, that yeah, absolutely. In fact, Canada adopted our renewable fuel. Sorry, not renewable fuel standard. Our reformulated gasoline program. So Canada also makes the switch in some of its bigger cities over to that summer blend of gasoline. Everyone in Canada, just like the U.S., everyone in Canada is using cleaner gasoline in the summer. But some areas, some of the larger cities are also using the same reformulated gasoline that the big cities in America are using. So, yeah, you can go and fill up in Canada. Although the joke is that most Canadians actually come down to the United States to fill up
Right.
because our taxes are much lower, even in areas like New York, that in the US, New York has above average taxes. Even for the Canadians, that's a benefit. It's quite amazing, Matt, the difference between I'm going to quickly try and pull this up, but I pulled this up the other day. If you're driving through Detroit, and you're headed across the Ambassador Bridge, the price in Canada, and let me quickly try to pull this up here and share it. The price in Canada on one side of the border, let me see if I can make this real big. You have Ontario, by the way, is the province. If you cross that Ambassador Bridge from Detroit into Ontario, here's the bridge. I don't know that we have a recent price. Let's see if we do. Of course, I can't click it when it's in the big window like this. Apparently, there we go. All. So we don't have a recent price on the bridge. Maybe this is it. No, that's not it. Anyway, point being here, Matt, is that the Ambassador Bridge, which I probably could pull up here, was last charging about 99.9 cents a liter. And then you look at some of these prices. This is why Canadians, and by the way, the Ambassador Bridge is duty free, meaning it's tax free. So that's why the bridge can get away with selling gasoline for basically an untaxed amount.
There's a station right on the bridge?
Yeah, it's in the duty free. They have an exclusion zone there.
Gotcha.
And if you check the Ambassador Bridge's website, you can very quickly pull up what the price is for the Ambassador Bridge. And so there's a lot of folks that do that will stop at the Ambassador Bridge here. And here you go. Here's the price. The Canadian price, $109 a liter. And, as I mentioned here, if you go just a little bit beyond the bridge, Matt, what's cheaper? That's about a 60-cent a liter difference. That's a massive difference. So 60 cents a liter? If we do that do the gallon, that's $2.27 a gallon different, Matt, cheaper.
Wow.
So we're talking about a sizable savings. So anyway, you get in those hot spots and you talk about, traveling between the US and Canada. The gasoline is essentially the same. The prices couldn't be more different, though, between the US and Canada, and then this tax-free area of the Ambassador Bridge.
Yeah, that's it. I did not realize the Ambassador Bridge even had the ability, even if it's on land. I did not realize that happened. That's it. That's wow. That's a large disparity between the situation. So I already knew the folks along the border on both countries knew that what the answer was, but there are a lot of Americans who may not fully realize what that answer actually is. So just a quick chasing of the rabbit, if you will.
Well, and another point on that subject too that a lot of folks don't even think about here in the U.S., Matt. There's also a very similar situation that people may not be fully aware of. And that is something I'm pulling up right now, that this is New York. And these are all gas stations on an Indian reservation in northwestern New York.
Oh.
So you look at the average in New York, 362, and you're like, wait, how are stations in New York below $3 a gallon? And, you pull up a map and this is why. Is because you have these large areas of and there it is, northwestern New York,
Mm.
Irving as well, on Indian reservations. And so look at this one specifically. I don't see if Google has it shaded as a reservation, but yeah, there are pockets where if you're driving down the road, Matt, 329, and then just down the same road, 364. There's a lot of these hot spots, and again, that kind of underlines why folks should be checking prices no matter where they are, within a state, crossing a state line. That's always very important.
And you raised a great point without even probably realizing it, but it was a very subtle point, which is Gas Buddy works in Canada as well. Just keep that in mind for our American folks. The price points are all there, just as if you were on this side of the border. So if you have summer travel plans, maybe you are in the Midwest or you are someplace else in the U.S. and you're going, let's go to Canada. It'll be cooler up there. Well, you can still use your Gas Buddy app. Just keep that in
Just
mind.
make sure you don't think it's $1.64 a liter. Excuse me, a gallon. It's $1.64 a liter. So folks up there might be like, oh my goodness, that 109 looked really good that we just looked up on the Ambassador
Right.
Bridge. But keep in mind, there's 3.785 liters to a gallon. So no, it's not cheap in Canada at all.
Yeah, that is the asterisk that you
Surprise!
want to put. Yeah, surprise. That's the asterisk that you want to have alongside that particular price. No question about that whatsoever. All right, so we've talked about hurricanes. We've talked about disparities in prices. We've even talked about Indian reservations and whether or not the border has an impact on the different types of gasoline.
I've got one more thing for you.
Oh, go, please do. Please do.
All right, well, yesterday, for those that tuned in, Gas Buddy, I led a seminar, a webinar, Matt. Obviously the election's getting closer. There's been a lot of talk. Former President Trump is about to name a VP in the weeks ahead. Both the DNC and the RNC are happening in the weeks ahead, one in Milwaukee, one in Chicago. So we're getting real close to the election. Gas Buddy yesterday, for those that didn't see it, the webinar, I would encourage anyone to check it out. This is the Gas Buddy newsroom, gasbuddy.com/newsroom. We shared a lot of the political misinformation. We debunked some of the misinformation on both sides of the political aisle. There's been a lot of talk, Matt, ever since President Biden took the oath of the Oval Office, about the Keystone, about the drilling moratorium. We've talked about President Trump's drill baby drill, if he can force oil companies to do just that. The rules and regulations that vary by state. So we spent about 30 minutes going through a lot of the misinformation or through the headlines that people hear about, again, from both sides of the political spectrum. And our goal was to dispel the myths, to get the information out there. And for folks that want to get the facts about gas prices now, you can do just that. We wrote up a huge look at the myths here, and we very carefully tried to review all of this. And so anyone that would like, the truth about gas prices, look how long this blog is. This is, we tried to make it all encompassing, Matt. All of that you can do if you're on social. We shared this on social. Otherwise, go to gasbuddy.com/newsroom. This is the latest press release. But, Matt, we've talked a lot about politics here.
Well, you were actually, that was the next thing I was actually going to mention. We've got so much news going on in politics right now. And yeah, sometimes it does have an impact, but it's minimal. And other times you're calling it a nothing burger. Actually, I'll put words in your mouth. You don't usually say nothing burger, but that's basically what it is. We got a lot of stuff going on. We have one political party who is not sure if they want the top person on the ballot to be the person that's there. That's the Democratic side.
Yeah.
We also have the Republican National Convention coming up next week. The former President Trump has not announced his vice presidential pick yet. He is expected to do that. If you are watching this at some point several days after our recording, he may have already done so. As of the time of this recording, he has not yet done so. So there's a lot of stuff taking place over the next couple of weeks. Will the current president drop out of the race? I mean, basically, to boil it down, a lot of uncertainty on both sides of the aisle. Will that, in your opinion, it's kind of uncharted water. I don't ever recall being 30, 40 days out from a convention and a current sitting president saying all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm not doing it. So it's kind of a
July
loaded.
4 may be over, Matt. The fireworks
Yeah,
have ended that we all watch, but the fireworks when it comes to the election are still well underway.
yeah. So the question that I have is, it's kind of a loaded question, and maybe something that you don't even know the answer to, because I'm not sure we've ever faced this situation before. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Do you think that's going to create some nervousness amongst all the markets, not just necessarily
Sure.
fuel, but I mean, when you have that kind of instability suddenly boiling up and boiling over, um, there's some problems there. But do you think that everybody's going to be like a steady hand, steady as she goes kind of a mindset, or do you think that's going to start creating some problems in the fuel, in the oil, in any other commodity or market? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as you mentioned, oil hates turmoil, oil hates instability. So the fact that we're getting a little bit of this shouldn't really impact the price of oil so much, because there's still only a certain amount of outcomes that we're going to see here, right? President Biden has maintained that he's still going to run. We're still well ahead of the election, so while there's a lot of uncertainty, it's not necessarily instability. It's just a bit of uncertainty. I mean, when you talk about instability, there will still be a president in the White House. We just don't know who it is. So, is it really destabilizing the U.S.? It's a little it's like you said, it's something that we haven't faced. So it should have no impact as we get closer to the election. Now, keep in mind, as we've reiterated many times in this program here before, we fully expect that gas prices will decline in the run up to the election, no matter who's on the ticket, whether it's President Trump, whether it's President Biden, whether President Trump picks a VP that's completely surprising, or whether or not the Democrats replace President Biden on the ticket. So this is something that is almost sure as, the temperatures getting cooler in the fall, that the temperature of gas prices in the fall is going to decline as well. And that's something that we had predicted back in December. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fireworks. We'll
Definitely.
cover them all. There is a lot of difference between policies on the right and the left side. Things like EVs and the incentives. We've talked about that. Things like drill, baby, drill, or drilling moratoriums on both sides of the spectrum can play a role. So there's really no shortage of talking about how the potential policies of both the right and the left could impact gasoline and oil prices moving forward. But we'll save that for another episode. I think as we wrap it up here today, Matt, highlighting the uncertainty, we're still 4 weeks away from the peak of hurricane season.
Yeah, that was the asterisk that I was going to throw out there and say, with your permission, you're calling for prices to decrease. But the National Hurricane Center again this week reiterated they are standing firm on their predictions of very active hurricane season upcoming. So with an asterisk there that you're seeing prices slowly fall,
Well,
what if we
slowly
have
increase.
with the asterisk that as long as the hurricane season behaves itself and doesn't do any major damage, is my assumption that you would be okay with saying yes?
Well, oil prices have been moving up, Matt, as we find here on CNBC's website. Oil at $83 a barrel. We're still up about $10 a barrel from early June. So this is why the national average we showed you earlier at 3.53 a gallon. That's why we're up 3 cents in the last week, 7 cents from the last month. Is because this right here, oil has continued to rally in the last several weeks. If we click it, and if we do like a month-long view, well, beautiful. Exactly what we were talking about. Oil in the last month from 78 to 83. If we zoom out a little bit more, yeah, early June was great, $73 a barrel. But now look, we are, within arm's reach of seeing the highest prices since potentially late April. So that's why we're facing a national average that has slowly increased. So, over the next week, I do expect the national average may continue to kind of be in this 350 range between, we'll say, 340 to 360. But gentle upside. If there is that perfect storm, Matt, there still is the risk of temporarily seeing the national average get closer to that $4 mark. Whether we hit it or not is going to be contingent on the details.
That's painful.
Yeah.
Please,
Let's
please.
hope we can get through it without seeing that. But obviously, Beryl, with being the earliest Category 5 storm on record, gives us a little bit of pause.
It does.
We highlight the risk. You could pay me a lot more. I could have a crystal ball, but Mother Nature is just one thing that will not ever be predictable. in terms
It's
of where we're
very
going to
true.
get those hurricanes.
Well, the next time I hear you say $4, please whisper it, don't yell. So I just want to throw that out there.
Don't shout it from the mountaintop, right?
Please, please, please whisper it, don't yell. Well, that I guess is going to pretty much wrap up everything. Prices for the next 7 days, you are thinking what?
Gentle increases here and there for those price cycling states that just went up. Michigan, Indiana are those states that just went up. They will go down. Ohio is going to make that big jump up here very soon. For the rest of us that don't see price cycling, I do think we'll continue to see a gentle lift in prices. Maybe not double digits, Matt, but I think a slow and steady increase for most of us.
All right. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap up this edition of Over a Barrel. Patrick DeHaan, along with myself, Matt McLean. Thanks so much for joining us. And we will talk again coming up next week. Have a good one.
See you later.